All right, excellent. It's 8:03 now, I believe, in Malaysia. So without further ado, I'll start with the introductions and hopefully you enjoy the session. Right, my name is Jun Lau. I'm the chairperson and founder of the AI and Healthcare and Digital Health Committee in the Malaysian Medical Association. As you know, this is our second webinar. We're the youngest committee ever founded, so to date. And it's been, I would say, approximately just under a year that we've just started. It's been a great pleasure so far. My just briefly professionally about myself, I used to serve in the MMA as the Selangor chairperson, Selangor chairperson a couple of years back when I was in Malaysia. Since then, I've moved on. I'm currently based in the US. I currently work with a global contract device development organization, working with top pharma to develop and test medical devices. Uh, my passion has always been, at the intersection and forefront of technology, and being the US is where I've seen great technologies work. The work that has gone into pushing AI to the state as it is today. With that, as part of the youngest committee, we built our, I guess, our efforts on I would say under the the abbreviation of EPIC. So education, partnerships, innovation, and collaboration. And the real point of this committee really is to bring together global efforts, global chapters to unite under one roof to push the adoption of responsible AI, to push the adoption of technology and create a better future for healthcare collaboratively. So with that, I would like to really move on to introduce the star of the show today, Dr. Melvin. I'll give you a very brief background, and then Dr. Melvin can take it from there. So before I even start, I would like to say Dr. Melvin's a great friend. I met him in Chicago. Actually in California, so to speak. And then we collaborated on a podcast with the American College of AI and Medicine. And I was very honored to be a speaker there. So Dr. Melvin really specializes in academic internal medicine and served as a core faculty member and hospitalist of an internal medicine residency program for over 20 years. Most recently, he was assistant professor in the Division of Academic Internal Medicine at the University of Illinois College of Medicine. And during this time, he actually pivoted into artificial intelligence and medicine and completed multiple certifications in AI from prestigious universities such as the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Harvard Medical School, as well as one of the premier institutions here, Northwestern University Kellogg School of Management. So shout out to one of the great schools in my backyard right now, so to speak. So as I mentioned, Dr. Melvin is president and founded the American College of AI and Medicine late last year, and I've been very fortunate to be part of this movement. And just to preface, Dr. Melvin's a great, I would say, a great educator and is a great champion for AI for good. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Dr. Melvin as he introduces himself and take us through his passion topic for today. So Dr. Melvin, the floor is yours.
Wow. Well, June, that was such a lovely introduction. Thank you so much. My pleasure to speak to you guys today. I have no financial disclosures or conflicts of interest regarding this talk today. We're a not-for-profit professional society. We're not a business. We're not selling anything. We're not patenting anything. But speaking of patenting, for someone to use an AI in the US for patient care, the expectation would be that it has FDA approval. As of March 25th of this year, there are 1,016 AI as a medical device products that have FDA approval. Of these over 1,000, 76% are in radiology, 10% are in cardiology. So most of what you can use today in AI and medicine is in radiology or cardiology. but actually what's being used the most right now in the US is called ambient listening systems, or it's basically something recording your conversation with a patient in the office and generating an electronic medical record. But in the States here in 2025, most radiology departments are in the midst of trying to implement AI into clinical practice. And because of the complexity of doing this, most hospitals here in the US now have something called a chief AI officer within the C-suite leadership to try to decide, if there's 1,000 algorithms and let's say 100 of them do the same thing, and you have to pick one that you're going to pay for your hospital, how do you know which one to choose from? And there's not a lot of evidence-based medicine yet around these algorithms, so there's a real need for someone at the level of June Law here who has deep knowledge on AI and products to help decide which one of these should our hospital use. Now, all of this started with Alan Turing, who is the guy who created the computer. And if you want to watch a really great movie, one that won virtually every award, it's called The Imitation Game, and it's based on his life story. But in a nutshell, he came up with the idea for the computer in 1936 and published it on a 36-page paper called Computable Numbers. He didn't build it yet. He just put the theoretical construct. This is the paper. The notebooks he had regarding all this sold on auction recently for $1 million. But the next phase of all, so Alan secretly during World War II was working for the British Army in hiding to develop the first computer, which he did, and it had one purpose and one purpose only: to break the code of the German army, and it was instrumental in winning the war. But then after World War II was over in the 1950s, at Dartmouth, a group of PhDs met one summer, and they coined the term artificial intelligence. And they started working on this idea of a computer that could have artificial intelligence. Now, in the most recent Nobel Prize, which is 2024, it was in two categories focused exclusively on AI. So the Nobel Prize in Physics and the Nobel Prize in Chemistry went to AI-related areas. And I'm sure you guys have heard about these individuals. The part for physics is basically what's called a neural network. A neural network is a computer simulating how the brain's neurons interact with each other. So John Hopfield and Geoff Hinton were responsible for this. They're British scientists. Basically, what the exact quote was for John Hopfield from Princeton: the Hopfield Network for foundational discoveries and inventions that enable machine learning with an artificial neural network. And for Geoff Hinton, who was at the University of Toronto, used Hopfield's network as a foundation for a Boltzmann machine to classify images. Now, this is really important because I told you at the beginning, of the over 1,000 FDA-approved algorithms, most are in radiology. Most read images. To be able to do this, the foundation that allows it was developed by Hopfield and Hinton. Really, they came up with these ideas in the 70s, 1970s, mid-70s in the UK, but it wasn't until recently that they're actually being used for patient care. So this is the neural network on a diagram to show how it works. There's an input, there's hidden layers that these are all simulating neurons that are communicating with each other. And then there's an output layer. Now, the other area for Nobel Prizes was in chemistry. And June nicely mentioned about Northwestern. I did my undergraduate degree at Northwestern University, and that was in biological sciences and chemistry. So I'm very interested in the chemistry Nobel Prize. And that also went to two people, David Baker and Demis Hassabis. And why this is important is they figured out a way for artificial intelligence to predict the folding of proteins if you give AI the amino acid sequence. Now, this is the basis now of all new drug discovery. So it's a really important breakthrough. Now, I learned that David Baker actually did his PhD training here in Chicago at the University of Chicago. The University of Chicago has one of the longest lists of Nobel Prize winners. So June and I are in the right town. Chicago's my hometown. But the UK has been very influential in AI, and Demis Hassabis has gotten and John Jumper really have a lot of recognition. Demis is on the cover of Time magazine as the most influential person in the world this year. They, in the UK, started a company called DeepMind that was then later absorbed by Google. And what they did is develop something called AlphaFold. And that's an AI model that has predicted the folding of every protein known to man, 200 million proteins. Now, this is a problem, this protein folding problem has been a problem that has not been solved for the past 50 years, but now we can, with AI, predict the three-dimensional structure of a protein from amino acids. This is how it works. You give the neural network the amino acid sequence, and then it can cycle through and come up with the correct folding of the protein. This is a schematic from the Nobel Committee, just explaining how the 1D is converted into a 3D. Now, for you to really understand or have a dialogue with us about AI, we all have to know the language of AI. And so these are some terms I'm going to quickly just go through, just so everyone's on the same page. You know some of them you may not know as well. So hopefully this is helpful. What about a neural network? Well, we already demonstrated that. You can see my diagram up at the top. It's a machine learning program that mimics the way neurons work together to arrive at conclusions. And machine learning uses data and algorithms to imitate the way humans learn, gradually improving in accuracy. You'll hear a lot about deep learning, which is what we all use now every day, which is a subset of machine learning using multi-layered neural networks to simulate complex decision-making. Now, AI can be trained where we give it labels of data. For example, we can give it X-rays where the radiologist has read the X-ray and says, this is the diagnosis to train the AI. Or we could give it pathology images where a pathologist has said this is the diagnosis, and that's supervised learning. But AI can learn from unlabeled data sets to discover hidden patterns without the need for human intervention, using machine learning algorithms to analyze and cluster unlabeled data sets. Now, this is really important because now we can detect patterns that the human eye wouldn't recognize that are really transformative, and I'll give many examples throughout my talk. Now, what really was the game changer what brought AI to the forefront of it being used in medicine now is the large language model, which is a computer program trained on data that recognizes and interprets human language. So a good example of a large language model would be ChatGPT, which was released by OpenAI. The way these work is they simply are an autocomplete of the last sentence, predicting the word of the last word in any sentence. That's all it is, but it, in so doing, has incredible power. That was launched to the public on November 30th of 2022. So we're almost soon to be 3 years out. Now, what does GPT-4 in the ChatGPT mean? It means generative pre-trained transformer. Now, we were able to do AI in medicine even before those large language models using computer vision. That's what came out of Jeffrey Hinton's work from some of his students. I'm hopeful that those listening today, if you choose to collaborate with our organization, that we make great discoveries such as this. But computer vision uses neural networks and machine learning to teach computers to obtain information from an image. Now, I really want to emphasize this. This is really important. Remember this. If you're using AI to take care of a patient, there's two ways to do that. If it's image analysis, which it is right now for the majority of things, that's computer vision. That's different than using ChatGPT or a large language model to, say, interrogate the patient's chart or medical record. Now, we know that AI can generate new images and video and speech and text. This is generative AI. The part that's really interesting in medicine is autonomous AI, where the computer actually can make a medical decision. And we'll give an example of that. And the one that I think this is the term that most people, unless you're really knowledgeable about AI, don't really know. It's called RAG, or Retrieval Augmented Generation. This is where we combine the retrieval of relevant external documents with a generative response, allowing for up-to-date information. It reduces hallucination. So let me give you a really good example so you understand. Let's say you wanted to look up something about cancer care, and you type it into ChatGPT, and it gives you a recommendation about taking care of a patient with cancer, let's say lung cancer. The problem is there could be some hallucinations because it's basically interrogating the entire internet, and some of that's not evidence-based medicine. But doctors here in the US, especially my residents and students, they don't do it that way. They don't go on ChatGPT. They use something else, which is called open evidence. Now, open evidence uses ChatGPT, but then it uses RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, to only sample the data from evidence-based literature. So that way we don't really get as many hallucinations. We just get the evidence. And our organization and the conference we're hosting in Chicago is about that, making medical decisions on the medical evidence, which is not the broad internet. So the topics I'm going to cover today are ophthalmology, cardiology, oncology, gastroenterology, critical care. Now, AI in medicine started in the field of ophthalmology. Specifically, the first autonomous AI tool that was developed was actually developed in 2010 by a Dr. Michael Abramoff at the University of Iowa. And he used computer vision because we didn't have large language models in 2010. He used computer vision to look at images of a diabetic eye to screen for diabetic retinopathy. So this is the first FDA-approved autonomous AI as a medical device. Now, it took him 8 years from the time he created it to get FDA approval and several more years to get the Congress to actually have Medicare pay for this to be used on patients. But he published it in one of the Nature journals. Nature has many journals. Nature is the most prestigious medical journal, as you know. So this was MPJ Digital Medicine, a pivotal trial for autonomous AI diagnostic system for the detection of diabetic retinopathy in a primary care office. So the idea was, and this could be important for you in Malaysia. For example, let's say you're in a rural area of Malaysia and you don't have access to as many ophthalmologists as you would like. And let's say, like me, I have thousands of patients with diabetes. The majority of my patients in my career have diabetes, and I need them to get an eye screening for retinopathy. What if I don't have access easily to an ophthalmologist? You could use this tool in primary care office setting. So Dr. Abramoff has turned this into a company. They actually have locations here in Chicago and elsewhere, and then he sells his device to be used in primary care offices. So it's an AI system to detect diabetic retinopathy. In this trial from 2018, he had 900 patients in the primary care setting, and it was very effective at screening for diabetic retinopathy without an ophthalmologist, it's actually no doctor needed. It's autonomous. So it had a sensitivity at that time of 87% and a specificity of 90%. And the FDA authorized the very first AI in medicine tool. This was it. Now, since that time, Google independently has come up with similar products that are of even higher sensitivity and specificity, which I'll be talking about. Now, the editor of the journal had a clever title for his editorial, with an eye to AI in autonomous diagnosis. But let's talk about what Google did. So Mike did work in 2010. In 2016, Lily Peng, who's a physician who right out of medical school started working at Google doing AI work, she developed and validated a deep learning algorithm to detect diabetic retinopathy. Now, why this is important is, and you will find this really critical, is when she did this study at Google, and I really like this because it speaks to what we're trying to do globally. She didn't really deploy it or test it in the US. She deployed it and did the trial in rural areas of Thailand and India, where patients would not necessarily have access to an ophthalmologist. Now, since that time, since this paper, even recently, as of a few months ago, this same group at Google has continued to publish more around this deployment in rural areas throughout the world. And even Johns Hopkins has deployed this in underserved areas in the Baltimore and Maryland areas. So it's really a very impactful use of AI in medicine. But in this trial, the training data sets included 9,963 images. The algorithm had a 90% sensitivity and 87 and a 98% specificity for detecting diabetic retinopathy. And they compared the AI to 7 US board certified ophthalmologists as the ground truth. So this was a good example of how to use AI in medicine. Now, one thing I want to highlight, and I mentioned seeing patterns or detecting patterns that the human eye wouldn't see that are really transformative. we can use this same approach, and instead of using it for diabetes of the eye, we can actually detect Alzheimer's disease or Parkinson's disease using computer vision to read an image of the eye, and it can recognize the dementia of Alzheimer's disease or the Parkinson's disease 6 years before you would ever see signs or symptoms in an office setting. So the potential here to detect these diseases early and hopefully intervene in some way is amazing, long before we would see it clinically. Now, I mentioned at the beginning, most AI and medicine is in radiology. The 770 algorithms out of the 1,000 are in radiology. So the person that's most influential, the two people that have done the really pioneering work in this, was Pranav Rajpurkar and Matthew Lundgren. And they did this work together at Stanford in 2018. And they basically said, let's use computer vision to read a chest x-ray. Now there's like 770 algorithms to do that, but this was the original work in 2018, and they trained an AI on 112 chest x-rays with deep learning to recognize 14 diseases on a chest x-ray. These were the diseases: atelectasis, pneumothorax, cardiomegaly, consolidation, effusion, edema, infiltrate, emphysema, mass, fibrosis, nodule, pleural thickening, pneumonia, hernia. So now you could actually deploy in your own hospital, for example, an AI tool that will look at the lung nodules and try to determine if they're cancerous. So this is the origin of that. Now, a colleague of mine at the University of Illinois in Chicago here did something amazing. This is William Gallanter, someone I went to medical school with 30 years ago. He found a way using AI to detect diabetes on a chest x-ray without any blood work. And I'll show you how it's done. So AI can see these patterns on an x-ray of the chest that the human eye would not be able to see. The highlighted areas are increased fat, and that's in the mediastinum, upper abdomen, supraclavicular regions, ribs, and clavicles. And basically, in a nutshell, the summary was that this model could identify patients with type 2 diabetes on an x-ray. So if we went into the electronic medical record at your hospital in Malaysia, and we used this tool, we would be able to find people that will develop diabetes that maybe don't really have evidence of it at the time. So we could then start doing preventive medicine, preventive lifestyle changes so that they actually don't develop diabetes. A really amazing tool. Now, the area of medicine that has the most randomized trials and the most evidence for use of AI is in gastroenterology, specifically colonoscopy. Now, the truth is that 1 in every 3 polyps are missed during a colonoscopy by gastroenterologists. This has been validated over and over again. So we call that the adenoma miss rate. Now, if we add AI into the colonoscopy procedure using computer vision, that goes from 33% or 32.4% to 15%. So I'm internal medicine. The organization I'm a fellow of is American College of Physicians. They have a journal called the Annals of Internal Medicine. In that journal, a group from Yale published a systematic review and found there's 44 randomized trials, there's 36,000 patients showing the benefit of using AI within a colonoscopy. So most gastroenterologists in the US, when they do a colonoscopy now, have an AI tool that's part of the colonoscopy. And a red box flashes and identifies polyps that would otherwise have been missed. What about in cardiology? Well, AI has been used extensively in cardiology. I mentioned that outside of radiology, the next field that has had the most number of AI algorithms approved is in cardiology. So we're going to talk about briefly AFib, heart failure, and MI. Now, this was a really large study on smartwatches to detect AFib. It was through Apple, and there were over 400,000 patients enrolled in this trial. And it basically showed that, number one, almost 50% of Americans have a smartwatch, so half of the nation, and that if we use an app as part of the smartwatch, we were able to detect atrial fibrillation very effectively. So if you have a smartwatch, you can, and you wear it, it can help detect AFib and prevent a stroke. So how is this done? Well, optical sensors can detect an irregular pulse. The smartwatch app can then identify AFib using your smartphone. Now, if the optical sensor detected an irregular pulse notification, then the patient had a patch mailed to them that's basically they put on their chest, that's a monitor that they would wear for 7 days to confirm this. As I mentioned, there were 419,297 patients followed for 8 months. And the take-home point was we can now use the smartwatch to detect AFib. Similarly, we can use AI for MI. Now, I can't tell you how many times I get called by a medical student, a resident, or even an ER attending saying that there's ST elevation. I even recently brought my mother-in-law, who's 100 years old. I rode with her in an ambulance to the nearby hospital. The ambulance driver thought, or paramedic thought she had ST elevation. The computer was saying ST elevation. The nurse thought it was ST elevation. The whole time I knew it wasn't ST elevation, it was just repolarization. So this is a real big problem, that because no one wants to miss an MI, everyone overreads repolarization as ST elevation. But if we use AI to read that initial EKG in the emergency room, we can eliminate inappropriately calling in the cath lab on someone that isn't really having an MI. So this was the ARISE trial published in June 2024 in New England Journal AI. And it basically showed that if you used AI to read the initial EKG, and it would then message through the cell phone, it would send a text message to the cardiologist on call for the cath lab, that you could reduce the door to needle time. And more importantly, you eliminated like the false positives calling in the cath lab unnecessarily. So really a great use of AI. But we don't have time at this talk to go in deep on cardiology, but just key take-homes are AI can look at an EKG and determine the ejection fraction, essentially diagnosing heart failure without an echo. It can predict AFib even if you don't see it on your EKG. It could also, without blood work, tell you if there's diabetes on an EKG, hyperthyroidism, chronic kidney disease, anemia. These are some examples of publications showing what you can see on an EKG with AI. To me, this is literally mind-blowing, and is one reason why I'm spending my time working specifically on AI in medicine. Now, in cancer care, there's something now called precision medicine. Most people in oncology are doing precision oncology using AI. I'm about to go tomorrow here in Chicago at McCormick Place, which is the same place our conference is going to be held, is the oncology or ASCO meeting, which is the main cancer conference. There's going to be a focus on precision oncology. For example, using AI to read mammograms to detect breast cancer better than the human eye can, or using AI, as I mentioned, to screen for lung cancer to more accurately determine the lesion, the segmentation, the classification, whether it's benign or malignant. So all of these things can be done. And really what's happening worldwide is just the very early phases of deploying AI tools. But the one thing that's been fully deployed in the US virtually everywhere now is something called ambient listening systems. So we'll talk about that in a moment. So I'm a hospitalist. The number one cause of death in the hospital setting is sepsis. 1 in every 3 deaths in the hospital is from sepsis. So again, here in Chicago and in Illinois, a team of researchers from the University of Chicago and the University of Illinois Champaign here published their first FDA authorized AI tool for sepsis prediction. Now, there's been a lot of sepsis models that have been deployed over the years, and they've been really a disappointment or a failure, but this one actually works really well. So now with the current version of AI tools, we can predict before someone dies of sepsis and intervene. So this is called Sepsis Immunoscore. It has a high accuracy in detecting sepsis, and this could enable prompt identification of patients at high risk of adverse outcomes, improving clinical decision-making. We call this a clinical decision support tool. So I'll kind of end with this use of AI in primary care. So in the US, several years back, a law was passed requiring that we no longer write things on paper, but rather we have an electronic medical record. So since that time, it's created a huge burden to the physician. So the doctor-patient relationship has really been adversely affected because the physician is glued to the keyboard during their visit. And so how do we restore the doctor-patient relationship? We basically have a speaker in the room that listens to the doctor talking to the patient, ambient listening or a voice recognition technology, and then it generates the note so that we don't have to be data entry clerks anymore. And so this is now reducing burnout. Many physicians in America wanted to leave or quit being a physician because they're spending their entire free time after hours when they go home on the computer trying to enter the data from their visits during that day. We call this term that has come out is called pajama time, meaning you see 8 hours worth of patients, but then you go home and you spend another 8 or more hours on the computer trying to enter all that on the electronic record. So that's why doctors have been wanting to quit. But now with AI, we can solve this specific problem. So again, in New England Journal of AI in June of 2024, this study was of Nuanced Dragon Ambient Experience, or DAX Copilot, which is a Microsoft product. But there's many other companies making similar products like Abridge or many other branded versions of what's called ambient listening systems. So this was a large multi-site academic center trial showing the benefits of DAX Copilot for note writing. Now, interestingly, it doesn't really reduce your time, but it does decrease the burden of note writing. So Mayo Clinic published Impact of Ambient Artificial Intelligence Documentation on Cognitive Load. So even though your time isn't really shortened, cognitive load is improved, which is felt to reduce burnout. Now, it's not just being used to write the electronic medical record notes. Once that patient has an encounter here in the US health system, they're given a code that allows them patient portal access to their chart, but then they send messages to their doctor through the portal. So this is a huge burden on physicians. Can you imagine you saw 8 hours worth of patients? You're now spending another 8 hours or more trying to type in everything on the electronic medical record. And then you have to answer. Again, another thing is patients are barraging you with portal questions, and then you have to respond to their questions. So AI is being used to generate the response, and then the doctor reads it and signs it and sends it out. So this is a trial from April of last year showing the using of the similar tool for patient portal messages. So what are the lessons learned here? That both at the University of California, San Diego, and at Stanford, although physicians didn't save time, they valued the tool for reducing cognitive burden and simplifying mental effort. Patients really love the response so much more when AI drafts it, because if we draft it, it's a one-liner, two-liner. AI gives a very detailed response. And physicians really like the fact that it reduces the burden on doing these responses. So what did we learn today? Number one, that in 2024, the Nobel Prizes in physics and chemistry were AI, and that the medical impact is that the prediction of protein folding will be the new way that drug discovery is done. We learned that there is autonomous AI, no doctor needed for reading diabetic retinopathy, and that uses computer vision. And the computer vision also can be used to read not only chest x-rays, but CT scans, MRIs, any imaging, and that the FDA has approved these algorithms and they're being deployed in the US and radiology departments. And that if you were to send a patient for a colonoscopy now, there's a good chance that AI will be enabled in the colonoscopy, helping to detect polyps that would otherwise be missed, and that AI will be a powerful tool for better reading of mammograms, of lung nodules, and that for cardiology, not only will it help read an EKG for MI, but it could look at that EKG and know the ejection fraction, whether diabetes is present, kidney disease is present, thyroid disease, anemia. And that in primary care, it's really fully deployed in the US now for these ambient listening systems, which are reducing burnout. And that it can recognize patterns that we cannot see at the pixel level, whether it's a retinal image, whether it's Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, whether it's diabetes on a chest x-ray or the ejection fraction on an EKG. And that as a physician scientist, which all of you guys are, that this is a transformative moment that's truly magical. These are life-altering breakthroughs that are happening at a pace unheard of in medical research. And that hopefully this talk and future talks that we'll be collaborating on will encourage you to learn as much as you can about the intersection of AI and medicine, so that together we can go boldly where no one has gone before. Now, if you like what you heard today and you want a deep dive on each subspecialty within medicine, we're having a 2-day evidence-based scientific session here in Chicago, where June is with me. June has been instrumental in everything we do here in our organization. But if you don't come live, it's okay. To make it easy for you, we have a virtual version of the conference that will really be very much like attending live. If you use this QR code, if you point your phone at this QR code, it will take you to our conference platform. Or you could just go on Google and type in 4Waves, FOUR space WAVES, and American College of Artificial Intelligence and Medicine. And you'll come to our platform. It has the entire schedule of speakers. If you're someone that's doing AI research, you could submit your abstract. Hoping you will attend at least virtually September 19th and 20th. You can become a member of our organization by going to our website, www.americancollegeaim.org. If you want to publish a paper with me, you can email me at this email. We have a podcast. If you go on Apple or Spotify and you type in my last name, Spiseman, Speisman, we put out a podcast every 2 weeks. Our very first podcast was my interview with June Law, which was fabulous. We have journal clubs, grand round lectures, a quarterly newsletter. We're about to launch our Journal of the American College of Artificial Intelligence and Medicine with Walter Kluber. And if there are CME credits for our conference. This is my personal email and our website if you want to reach out to me. And this is our meeting platform, event.4waves.com at SSACAIM/pages. On here, you can register, you can submit an abstract, you can see the full schedule of speakers and who's attending. So at this point, I'm going to open it up for questions from anyone in the audience.
All right, so quickly taking over. Thank you very much, Dr. Melvin. So obviously, if you have any questions, if you could kindly put them in the chat, that would be lovely. Whether it's about the conference that Dr. Melvin is talking about, whether it's regarding collaborations, we welcome all questions. And if you obviously have questions about the talk today, please feel free to put that in the chat. We have a satisfaction survey. Please, I really encourage you all to just quickly, give your feedback. We really want to, this is a growing process, right? As we come together and understand what, the needs, right? What are each individual specialty needs for us as well in Malaysia, we will seek to tailor that specifically. And that's what Dr. Melvin has been mentioning, the specific groups that he is running. We will look forward towards those collaboration, because as just to call out to a friend of mine, Dr. Chow, an emergency physician, we were just having a quick chat and we talked, and what I really encourage is immersive learning right now. There's so much of content going out there, right? It's impossible for us to be an expert immediately. The best way I really like to say is immerse yourself in a project, immerse yourself in a learning program, so to speak, and get yourself up to speed that way, because the fastest way to learn is being, I would say, in the thick of things. Like, as we are all doctors, we understand what that means. So, yeah. So anyways, do we have any questions from the floor? All right. I don't see anything.
June, if you can allow people to unmute if anyone wants to speak into the
this is a webinar session. Mr. Long, we are unable to unmute them, right? Yeah, so
right.
Unfortunately, but I think this is a good point. Next time, perhaps we have a more interactive session, right, everyone? So that really helps. So again, I welcome honest feedback, and a great shout out to my AI committee, Dr. Sivabala Salvaratnam, Dr. Ong Eng Jo, Dr. Gunatira Rao, and Dr. Azizan. They all very prominent members in MMA. Dr. Ong is SCOMOS Sarawak chairperson. Dr. Gunen is Negeri Sembilan SCOMOS chairperson. So please reach out to them as well with your ideas, with your talks for collaboration. That will really help us, grow. Right? I want to encourage us to grow together. This is not an individual effort. By June, I welcome all of you to come on board. Reach out to me on my committee and propose your collaboration. And let's see, I do have a question in the chat, just quickly making sure I don't miss it. Oh, thank you very much, Michael. Thank you very much. So if
Now, June, since
yeah,
there's no
almost,
questions yet, why don't you ask me a question
I was yeah.
off
Well,
that even it just whatever comes to mind, and while we're waiting to see if anyone types in a question to the chat.
absolutely. While I wait for that, actually, I do have a very interesting question. So currently in your work and with your travels, what are the most, I would say, key foundational topics in AI in medicine that you would encourage the doctors here to start with? In their journey to immerse themselves in the healthcare. I mean, AI in medicine. What are the key topics, foundational topics?
Right. Well, we're going to have a workshop on this, but basically, I like how you phrase it. So I got really good advice from people when I started doing this, which is you really have to start with the foundational topics of definitions. I briefly went into that, but uh, the terminology is the most important thing to learn, but really in depth, and that would be a great starting point. And then once you're past the terminology, I like your suggestion, which is figure out what area of medicine or what disease you're passionate about. And then I like that you said do a project. So we have over 25 virtual lab groups. Anyone can reach out to be part of that. But doing a project really takes your knowledge to the next level.
Mhm.
But if you weren't wanting to go into a project and you already know all the definitions, then reading some papers would be very helpful. The New England Journal has a digital one called NEJM AI. Now, again, we're all like very tight for time. I know you are, June. Really good advice besides listening to our podcast. I would highly recommend that if anyone's driving from their home to a hospital, that during that drive, they listen through Apple Podcasts for free to NEJM, New England Journal of Medicine, AI podcasts. There's currently about 20 of them. And if you listen to them on your way to and from the hospital, I guarantee your knowledge level of AI in medicine will be far beyond the majority of the world. So, and it's effortless. You don't have to take a course, you don't have to struggle to find the time. You're listening while you're doing something else. If you exercise every day, listen to the podcasts, either our podcast or NEJM while you're exercising, while you're doing necessary things around the house, while you're getting ready in the morning. If you just listen effortlessly to some podcasts, but good ones, either NEJM, AI, or ours, that content will scale up your knowledge so well and so quickly and so painlessly. So I would actually even recommend that for June, who is literally working, almost 24 hours a day, that if you find yourself in a car driving somewhere, or you're in your bathroom in the morning getting ready, just in the background, have one of these two podcast series playing, and you will be amazed at how your knowledge level is now through the roof and so much beyond what most of the world it knows. So that's really my best take home pearl for you guys, is to listen to podcasts, because we are really overwhelmed with our patient care in 2025. And this is a way that you could do it while you're driving somewhere or getting ready or having your breakfast or something. So there is a question now by Ray, and it says, how affordable are these systems? Now, that's a really interesting way of thinking about it. So an inexpensive way to use AI in medicine, which all my students, our residents, are doing free of charge, is they use something called open evidence. And the way they use it is whenever they see a patient, if they want to look something up quickly about the latest treatment, they just type it into open evidence. Now, in the US, that product is free, but you have to have what's called an MPI number. But some of my colleagues have been working on making it available worldwide. So I don't know if you can get access to that for free in Malaysia, but I know that my colleagues are working on getting access to every nation. So that is a tool that you don't have to pay for. You could use Chat GPT. That's also free. I don't pay for the subscription one, and I'm the AI guy for the world, and I'm using the free version of ChatGPT. So that's another tool. It's just be aware though, it can hallucinate. So it's better to use one with that's only evidence-based, like uh, the ones we mentioned. So the other ones do have a cost to them. And so then in that case, the hospital or health system C-suite leaders, like a chief AI officer and a CEO, have to then pay for the hospital to have access and then give you, the doctors on staff, access. So that cost goes to the hospital, but not you personally as a physician. Is it difficult to learn? Is a question by O. Hong. No, it's not if you do the podcast. So that's my best advice on making it not difficult to learn. But if you want to really get high level, you do what I did and take a certification program online through Harvard or MIT or Stanford. Great.
Yes, great question. Sorry, Dr. Melvin, we have three more questions we need to answer. That's why I had to stop you there. That's a question in our question and answer section. So I'll just read out the questions briefly. We have one from Hazwan. With all this, he's asking, with all this AI application in medicine, would it make the doctor irrelevant later? I think that's what we talked about earlier. What would our relevance be with AI becoming such a strong a part of, healthcare?
One thing is clear, AI will not replace a physician ever. That's for sure. It's always going to require a physician to oversee it. So the right way to look at it is AI is like a medical student. It can help you, but you have to check its work because we would not want to expose the patient to harm, so we have to oversee it. So it's a tool, it's a really powerful tool, but it's not going to be a replacement for a physician ever.
All right. So we have another question as well, Dr. from Dr. Chiu Weng Yu. He asked are there any AI models in obstetrics that is present in the US? So what have you heard or seen from your interaction with doctors in the US?
There are currently some predictive models that have been used, especially for preeclampsia, that I just saw some publications on. The simple answer is yes, they exist. They're primarily in the research mode as opposed to the deployment mode. But I had mentioned to June earlier and Dr. Siva that I've been asked to be the guest editor on a journal that's going to cover what's going on in AI and obstetrics and gynecology. So I will just share with you that there's fewer than 100 papers in the entire medical literature on this. We are about to publish a review article and do a special edition of a journal on this, but it's very much in the infancy. There's data there, but it's only kind of in the research realm. It hasn't been implemented yet. Most of implementation is, like I mentioned, in radiology right now.
All right. No, thank you very much. And just two more questions, and then we'll let everyone go. So Dr. Sivaratnam Vijayakumar has asked a question about where do you see the growth of AI in medicine progressing the next 5 years?
Of course. So the greatest implementation we'll be seeing in the next year is in radiology. And then I see really significant implementation in cardiology and in oncology. I think those are the three areas where you will see full deployment and really transformation so in cardiology, basically just from a simple EKG, being able to really recognize things that normally we would need an echo for. And in oncology, really changing detection. Like right now, most cancers are found late and we treat them, but it's too late and the patient eventually passes away. We're going to now go to a world where we find cancer so early that we essentially cure it. And that's what I see happening in the next 5 years in terms of really meaningful impact.
All right. And the last question for the day, Dr. Melvin from Dr. Chi Tong Chow, is he's asking about the medical legal aspect of AI in medicine. I think it all ties into the responsible AI use as well. So yeah, that was the last
Right.
question.
So we a great question. Obviously, this is something that every day, 24/7, there's so much interest in this. I'll give you my simple take. Think of AI as your medical student. You're supervising it. In the end, you're responsible. That's the simple answer. So as long as you stay in that frame of mind that if you use the stethoscope to listen to someone's heart, you're still responsible for whatever you think you hear and what you do with that information. So you're responsible, not AI. You're liable. So you have to read every word of what it puts out and verify, or you have to check its work. It's a powerful tool. It's going to make you a better doctor. But in the end, you're responsible. So that's the straight out answer. We are having a professor of law from the University of Florida do an entire session on the legal implications and ethical implications. So if you come live or virtually to our conference, you can ask questions of Barbara Evans, who was published on this in New England Journal. And so we will have a legal and a government's talks at our conference.
All right. So I think with that, thank you so much, Dr. Melvin, for your time and for answering the questions. And most importantly, thank you to everyone who is present here today. Again, I welcome you to reach out to our committee members and myself, and let's talk collaboration and uplift, the doctors in Malaysia and our healthcare allies together. So with that, thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day. Have a good night. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.